This is the new Canon R50V, and it is giving me massive deja vu. This is basically an exact replica of Sony ZV-E10 II, which I just reviewed, except it has a few little improvements. But before I compare the two, I just want to share my experience using this camera as an already invested Canon shooter. Right out of the box, it is cool to have an RF camera that is in such a small form factor. Compared to the R50, the R50V is a little bit smaller and it's got a lot more advanced video features. But this does come at the expense of photocentric features like a viewfinder and a built-in flash. The only lens that I have that didn't feel ridiculous on this camera is my little 28mm pancake lens, because my L-series vlogging lens is just way too big for this little body. So if kit size is important to you, which is why you want to get this little thing, then I would recommend going with some RFS lenses instead of the RFL series lenses, because the RFSs are much smaller, they're cheaper, and they're still pretty good. One frustration for me with this camera was adapting to Canon's new menu system. It looks similar to what I'm used to on my R6 Mark II, but there's a few new things that are noticeably different, like a vertical layout for the Q button on the main info screen, the image quality menu, and the fact that I had to go digging into the color profile settings looking for C-Log. I actually had a whole beginning of a script written because I thought that this camera didn't have C-Log, and then I felt like, well, I remember them saying it has C-Log. I need to figure out how the heck to turn this thing on because I'm not seeing it, and then eventually I found it because people directed me the right way. Anyway, thankfully the camera does come with C-Log 3, which gives it that professional dynamic range and workflow that I expect from any camera that I use these days. I've been very happy with the image quality out of this little camera, which is capable of shooting 10-bit color, 4K 24 or 30 uncropped, or 4K 60 with a crop. If desired, you also can shoot at 120 frames per second on 1080p, but personally I just like to stick with 4K. 1080 is kind of outdated these days. One thing that's worth mentioning is that the R50V has an APS-C camera, which means if you want a wider field of view, you're gonna have to go with an ultra-wide lens like a 10-18, because Canon's APS-C cameras are 1.6 times cropped. So my 15mm lens on this guy is effectively a 24mm lens. The low light capabilities aren't exactly up to par of a full frame camera, of course, but they're still pretty passable, and I didn't notice a ton of noise even when bumping the ISO up to 6400. The autofocus on this camera is actually phenomenal. It always locked onto me or my subject really well, and it never missed. This puts it on par in my experience with my R6 Mark II, which is really saying something. Okay, this is weird. I'm trying to take a picture and it keeps freezing on me after I take the picture. We'll see if it'll do it again. The preview is not going away, and if I try to get back to the main screen, it won't do it. I've had this issue with my other Canon cameras, especially like the R6, would do this every once in a while. It wouldn't do it as consistently as this. Usually it was fixed right away, and so I didn't really consider it much of an issue, but this is persistent, and that concerns me. It's also worth noting that none of those photos that I took are on the camera. It's not writing them at all. Now, this doesn't seem to be an issue in video modes. I'm filming on the R50V right now, so it seems isolated to photos, but I'm still not able to take any photos on this. And this is version 1 of the firmware. I'm hoping that they come out with something that fixes that. I mean, they have to, because it's crippling the camera. So we do have an opportunity right now to test out the built-in microphone on the V, that's what you're hearing, and the image stabilization as well. The digital image stabilization on the R50V is actually really impressive. Way better than I thought, and way better than the PowerShot V1. I was expecting much more edge warble, but the R50V tends to keep that under control. What isn't under control, and I'm sorry for this, is the wind noise on the built-in microphone. I'm hoping that the larger body of this one, you would need some sort of windscreen attached to the hot shoe to make this usable outside. It was a windy day, but it wasn't anything insane, and all that you're hearing during that test is wind noise. So I'm sorry for your ears, but it was a valid test, I guess. Guess what? After shooting that video portion, it takes photos now. I'm gonna run back to that spot. To really get the most out of the R50V, you have to film in log. And to get the most out of log, you have to color grade it. Today's sponsor, Motion Array, makes this easier than ever with their library of hundreds of pro LUTs that will make your footage look incredible and cinematic with a single step. But that's not all the site has for you. Over 70% of creators use transitions and motion graphics in their final edits. Again, Motion Array makes this insanely easy. With access to their library of tens of thousands of professionally crafted graphics, templates, and plugins, you can boost your edit quality instantly. Then you can soundtrack your video using their music library and drag and drop special effects onto your footage using their plugins. You can even generate AI voiceovers using their new text-to-speech tool. Basically, Motion Array is a one-stop shop for everything you'll ever need to create any video ever. You can sign up and check out the site for free, or you can get 2 free months added on to any of their annual subscriptions by going through the link that I have down in the description. Thank you, Motion Array, for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to talking about the R50V. Canon took a crap ton of inspiration from Sony when designing this camera. I mean, actually, really, they just straight up copied Sony's homework. The R50V is the first Canon RF camera with a product showcase focus mode, a finger toggle for power zooming, an auto-rotating menu when shooting vertical, and a new slow and fast video mode that works suspiciously like Sony's slow and quick video mode. Both cameras also have built-in color looks, a smooth skin feature, and cinematic modes that simply add crop bars on top of your footage. I don't like or use any of these features, and I honestly wish that they weren't there to clutter up the camera's displays, but you don't have to use them. Image quality between these two cameras is pretty even. Both shoot the same resolutions and frame rates, and both have log color profiles. Now, depending upon how you use it, the Sony might have a slight edge when it comes to dynamic range with S-Log3, but the ZV-E10's processor actually limits this, and it can introduce some artifacting in S-Log3 if not exposed properly, so a lot of people just recommend filming in S-Log2 in that camera. Neither the Canon nor the Sony have any overheating limits when used in typical situations, even when shooting in 4K 60, which is incredible. Also, neither is equipped with in-body image stabilization, which is a bit of a bummer, and particularly for photos it's a problem, but these aren't photo-centric cameras. And neither one has a mechanical shutter for photos, but both are capable of capturing some awesome shots as long as you're not going to go after anything moving too fast. These are all of the ways that the Canon and Sony are similar, but there are a few things that I think Canon did a little bit better in this new R50V, and they're all on the outside. The Canon feels a little bit more comfortable in my hand with a rubber coating over the grip. It also has 5 more shooting mode options on the top control dial, as opposed to Sony's 3 options on their 3-way switch. Additionally, Canon has added a vertical mounting thread on the handle side, which is just absolutely awesome for both photographers and for content creators. And there's a new front-facing record button, which honestly I think is just kind of superfluous, but I suppose it's nice to have. Finally, the price difference between these two bodies is absolutely insane. The ZV-E10 Mark II costs about $940 used or $1,000 new, while the R50V comes in at a fraction of that at $650 brand new. Listen, all you Sony people get all bent out of shape when I don't talk about lens selection, so here we are, I'm going to talk about the lens mounts. The ZV-E10 Mark II takes Sony's E-mount lenses, and the R50V takes Canon's RF mount lenses, so what's the difference? Well, for a while, Canon did not allow any third-party companies like Sigma or Tamron to create any lenses using the RF camera mount system. As of I think over a year ago at this point, this isn't true anymore. Canon has opened up the RF mount, so there are third-party lenses like Sigmas and Tamrons hitting the shelves. That said, the Sony E-mount has been open for a lot longer, so there's a lot more variety at multiple different budget points for the E-mount as opposed to the RF. Now, Canon's RF-L lenses are absolutely phenomenal, and any of the ones that I've tested have actually outperformed Sony's G-Master lenses, which are around the same budget point. But this RF-L series glass from Canon is also ridiculously expensive, and it is certainly out of the hobbyist price range. That said, Canon has an adapter that allows you to use their old EF mount glass with any RF mount camera. EF glass has a ton ton of third-party lenses available. They've been making them for years and have perfected them. And even the super high-end Canon EF-L series glass is much more affordable these days because people are selling them on the used market because they're not RF. So if you want a Canon RF mount camera, which are a little bit more affordable than Sony's bodies, but you want some more affordable glass, then I highly recommend that you get some EF mount glass and adapt it to the RF camera. You're gonna see fantastic results. They work absolutely the same as the RF mount lenses do. I adapt my EF Nifty 50 and my 24mm f1.4 to my R6 Mark II in every video that I film. No complaints. So which camera should you get? Well, on stats, features, and budget alone, when we're talking about camera bodies, I would recommend going with the Canon if you're coming from nothing. But if you're already in the Sony system and have E-mount glass, or you want to be budget conscious without having to adapt lenses to your camera, then I would recommend going with the Sony. However, if you can expand your budget a little bit by $400, then I recommend going with the Sony a6700. It's an absolute powerhouse. You can watch this video up over here to see why I say that.